everybody to the community forum for December. And our topic today is going to be 4 categories of relapse triggers and how biochemistry influences them. But first of all, as we always do, if we could go around and very quickly, if everybody can introduce yourselves, just, 1 or 2 sentences, no more, about who you are, where you live, and what you do. Francis.
Morning, everybody. My name is Frances Holmes. I live in Santa Fe, California, and I do nutrition for sustainable sobriety.
Shelley.
I am Shelley Jo Wallstrom. I'm from Arroyo, Utah. My business is Feed Your Brain, Change Your Life through amino acids, nutrition, and hypnotherapy. And I also have my own line of amino acids.
Wonderful. And a book.
And a book. Yes.
Jane.
My name is Jane Reynolds. I'm a board certified holistic nutritionist, and I am based in Mesa, Arizona.
All right, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff Jones. I am outside of Boulder, Colorado. I'm therapist, addiction counselor, individual family coach, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome, everybody. So glad you're here. And I always get excited when I meet people and hear about what people are doing in the area of nutrition and recovery, because it's so needed. And to that end, I just want to remind everybody of my new website and fundraiser, eatingproteinsaveslives.org, because its purpose is to get this life-saving message out into the public in every way possible. And so we are both raising donations, but we're also have a resource packet around eating protein and recovery. And so please make use of that resource packet. Once you've donated anything over $2, $5 if you go through the GoFundMe page, you get access to the resource packet that you can use in any way you want. So, and Kim, we forgot you. Please introduce yourself briefly.
Good morning. My name is Kim. I live in Camarillo, California, and I'm just thoroughly interested in everything you guys have to say.
Well, welcome. Glad you're here. All right. So I've worked in the field of addiction for around 35 years. And at the height of my private practice, I specialized in people with chronic relapse. And so what we would do, what I would do with my clients is really deconstruct their entire recovery and look at where the missing pieces were. These are people who were even doing 2 AA meetings or NA meetings a day, had been through a couple of treatment programs, but still could not manage to sustain their abstinence, in spite of being highly motivated and feeling very bad about it. And so I sort of realized that relapse triggers and therefore relapse and cravings fit into 4 major categories. So the first category, and you know me, I'm always going to start with biochemistry. I may not end with biochemistry, but I'm going to start with biochemistry. And so the first category is biochemistry. And so what aspects of biochemistry can lead to cravings and therefore relapse? Well, the 2 we're most familiar with, of course, is missing a meal and low blood sugar is the first, that we believe and have found in clinical practice that missing a meal is probably the #1 relapse trigger for all addiction, because of what happens in the prefrontal cortex when a meal is missed, which I know this is review for most of you, but what happens is that adrenaline gets released. And adrenaline destabilizes us so that we get a conditioned response of a craving for our drug of choice to just calm ourselves down and return to homeostasis. Secondly, we lose access to our recovery skills because under the influence of adrenaline and cortisol, the prefrontal cortex, where executive functioning lies, essentially goes offline. So we don't have access. We forget to use our recovery skills. And thirdly, and this is probably again under the influence of adrenaline, but they haven't done the research to connect those dots, willpower appears if the prefrontal cortex does not have enough glucose supply to it, we lose access to willpower. And this is explored further in the website I just mentioned. So that's always where we start and end. Okay. When was the last time you ate protein prior to your craving or your slip? Always, always, always. But that's only one. Okay. Secondly, we know that depleted neurotransmitters lead to cravings and relapse because it's our neurotransmitters' job to step up in times of stress and give us the wherewithal to cope, whether it be to step up and take action through the catecholamine system, the ability to physically relax, take a deep breath, and organize our response through the GABA system, or the ability to just flow, right, through serotonin. If those are low, any stressor is going to feel overwhelming to us. We're not going to be able to step up. We're going to want to run and hide. And so you see, stress is actually the second category of relapse triggers. And we'll be talking about that, I will, in more detail in a couple of minutes. But you can immediately see how if neurotransmitter systems are depleted, we're not going to be able to respond effectively to stress. But what depletes our neurotransmitters? Well, we know absolutely that people coming out of sustained substance use, right, have depleted neurotransmitters because that's how the whole process works. That's what tolerance is about, is the building up, or is the depletion of neurotransmitters. So anybody in early recovery is starting out with depleted neurotransmitters. This is why, relapse is so high in the beginning, why craving is so high in the beginning, why people switch addictions to sugar, to sex, to whatever they can get their hands on in early recovery is because we have these starving neurotransmitters. The brain is saying, I want to step up. I want to step up. Give me something so that I can. And so people will look for whatever they can, but they're not taught that food matters. So they're not reaching for the protein, right? Which will work because that's what gives us the amino acids, which are the precursors of the neurotransmitters. They reach for whatever will give them that quick firing, but further deplete the neurotransmitters. However, because neurotransmitters are made out of food, any sort of malnutrition will maintain this depletion or deplete the neurotransmitters. Extra stress, illness, pain, all act as drains. And so sometimes we actually have to plug the holes. This is why I always talk about a three-legged stool. It's not just biochemistry. It's also just not psychosocial or spiritual. It's all three interacting with each other. So sometimes the drain on the neurotransmitters are psychosocial and spiritual. And so we need to address those. Imbalanced hormones can be a relapse trigger. PMS for women is a particularly high risk time. And so I suggest to all my female clients that they start circling their cravings and their slips on their calendar find some way to do it on an online calendar, to see if there's any pattern. Because when women relapse, most oftenly we relapse premenstrually. For that matter, menopause is also a very high risk time in a woman's life to develop addictive issues or to have a low simmering, like alcoholism. It could be, people could be misusing alcohol, but it's still under control. It's still not impacting or damaging their lives until menopause hits. And then all of a sudden it shoots up and becomes highly destructive. Same thing, interestingly enough, with men, that low testosterone can lead to cravings for stimulants for more energy and the ability, again, to step up and physically function. And there does appear to be a correlation between low testosterone and men who've been using opioid medication for a long period of time, whether that be prescribed or not prescribed, including methadone and apparently Suboxone. There needs to be more research on that, but what the research I've read so far, that's what is very clear. And so taking a look at boosting your client's testosterone, either using herbs or testosterone replacement therapy, might just be the answer. Those of you who've taken my classes know that my favorite story around that is this Italian-American, very macho gentleman from New York City, who he flew across country to work with my husband and I for an intensive. And when he paid for it, he pulled out this bill clasp and with a flourish pulled off $100 bills. Okay, so he was that type of person. And we're doing the intake, and he had issues with alcohol, was essentially a womanizer, and cocaine. He had control over the alcohol. He'd been through treatment. He was going to meetings. Alcohol was okay. The woman thing was a bit of a problem for him because he couldn't get it up. And so it was kind of useless. And he was needing cocaine in order to get to work. He had a manual labor job and he just couldn't function physically without the cocaine. Well, as soon as I heard the issue with his erections, my ears perked up. Okay. And I said, have you ever had your testosterone checked? You've got low energy, you're losing muscle, you can't work as well at work, and you're having issues with the ladies. And he said, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. Immediately got himself into a little bit of huff. Well, we did a test and his testosterone was off the bottom of the chart. Now, I sent him to his doctor to figure out why and to get on testosterone. But once his male counselor in New York was the one who talked him into going on testosterone replacement therapy because he himself was on it and it had been useful to him, because I wasn't getting anywhere. So I pulled in his counselor and finally he went on it and it turned his life around. And he was able to stay off cocaine. So these are just some of our biochemical triggers that set us up for cravings and relapse. The second category is stress. And why is stress an issue? Well, stress is an issue for a couple of reasons. And this could be good stress as well as what we call bad stress. So good stress is getting a promotion, moving into a better house in a better neighborhood, fun, exciting things, celebrations. Well, these, along with what we typically consider stress, stress, a fight with your boss, a fight with your partner, almost getting hit by a car on the freeway. All of these throw our system and our brain out of homeostasis. Okay, it throws us into sympathetic arousal. We've got cortisol running, we've got adrenaline running, right? Just like with low blood sugar. And it destabilizes the brain. Now that's okay, because typically we can pull from our neurotransmitters and we can flow with it and we can have fun and we can pull ourselves back down and we're okay. But when we're coming from a place of depletion and instability already, what it does is it triggers a conditioned response. They've actually done PET scans. We can see how a certain part of the brain will light up as a conditioned response. And people will start thinking about their drug or behavior of choice, even when they hadn't been. So it's like Pavlov and his little doggies, right? He paired the ringing of the bell to giving them meat, and so they automatically salivated. Well, salivation is out of conscious control. It was a conditioned response, and even after they removed the meat and just rang the bell, the dogs would still salivate. So we have this conditioned craving for our drug of choice because it's been paired with stress in the past. People, when they were actively using, would use their drug or behavior of choice to deal with stress. And so in the brain, that got paired. So now, when there's stress, the automatic wanting to reach for the substance or behavior gets activated. Well, the problem is that if if you've missed a meal or two and you don't have access to your recovery skills, right, chances are you're going to topple right over. Now, if the craving does get activated and you've been feeding your brain, you can say to yourself, oh, I have a craving. Oops, what am I going to do about it? Do I need to eat? Do I need to call my sponsor? Do I need to, right? And we'll come up, people who are working a good program will come up with an effective relapse prevention craving management strategy in the moment, but only if their brain is online. So that's stress. And of course, different people have different stressors, okay? Because part of stress is the meaning we put to something. So your boss calls you up and says, I want to meet with you in an hour. Well, for some people, that could be, most of us are going to have a little bit of butterflies in our stomach. Like, is this going to be bad or good? But some people are going to be more, with people with the balanced neurotransmitters, are going to be more, I wonder if he has a new exciting project for me. Other people are immediately going to go, and these are the people with the low serotonin and the people with PTSD and complex PTSD are more likely to go down the, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. What did I do wrong? I wonder if maybe I should quit now. Maybe I shouldn't even go into his office. Maybe I need to call out sick right now this minute and just postpone this meeting until tomorrow. Okay? So how we think and how we perceive is going to determine the degree of stress we experience, and therefore the degree of instability and need to reach for something to soothe us, calm us, numb us down, or help us step up. Now, there are some people who live in chronic stress because of untreated trauma. Okay, they live in a state of hyper arousal. The adrenaline, cortisol is always running. These tapes are always running. They're always looking over their shoulder for when the next danger is going to hit. And so the solution here is the combination of the biochemical support, supporting the adrenals, supporting the neurotransmitters, right? But then all of your psychosocial, spiritual healing tools. You know, CBT is very big in the addiction community, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it can be very useful because it can change the way we think and perceive and can give us more strategies for catching our negative self-talk and change it. But that's only if we have access to the thinking part of our brain. And when we're dealing with chronic PTSD, we're often operating out of a child state and rather than an adult state, for those of you who are familiar with ego state therapy. And these children's states don't have access to adult skills. And also are not capable of thinking through, you know, utilizing CBT. And this is where other recovery strategies need to be pulled in, you know, assessed for and pulled in. Because untreated trauma is frequently a cause of chronic relapse for a whole variety of reasons. Another cause of stress that ties directly back to biochemistry are the results of living with either post-concussive syndrome or, you know, traumatic brain injury and attention deficit disorder. Practitioners often forget to screen for these things, and these are biochemical issues with profound psychosocial implications, with profound stress implications, because people are experiencing failure in their lives because they're unable to effectively compete with their peers in both the activities of daily life as well as activities of daily life, as well as job or school. People with these, you know, brain impairments are frequently underfunctioning, and that underfunctioning leads to shame and depression and anxiety and overwhelm and. Again, we need to come in both biochemically with support. For instance, we found that high dose fish oil can tremendously help with post-concussive syndrome, but also, you know, the whole myriad of other psychosocial and spiritual skills out there. Okay, the third category is social. And social has to do with people who have, and social, the social category and the habit category often go hand in hand. Because people have gotten into the habit of using their drug of choice while socializing and having fun. And so a social situation, whether it be a party or a football game or what the boys do after work, or for that matter, what the girls do after work, right? Or the women in neighborhoods who have, get together for wine every afternoon by the swimming pool. Okay, this is a huge one for a lot of women, especially a lot of stay-at-home mothers who are a little more affluent. There's this whole relationship, social relationship with wine among a lot of these mothers' social groups. And these women who end up getting sober have a really hard time negotiating this because they've just lost their entire friend group and their entire mid-afternoon activity. And so this becomes a lot harder for people. This is also true of the bar crowd. You stop drinking, but your entire social life is circled around the bar. What are you going to do? And this takes some very creative problem solving. And one solution when people can get there, and often in very early sobriety they can't, is to be able to engage in these social activities and drink something non-alcoholically and still engage. There's mixed reviews in that. Sometimes that works for some people, sometimes it doesn't. Or sometimes it works while their friends are in the early stages of imbibing or smoking weed, but once somebody's thoroughly drunk or thoroughly high, they're actually not fun anymore. So I had one young man, he first came to me when he was 28, alcoholic, seriously ill with cirrhosis, late stage alcoholic at the age of 28, suicidal, desperate, did everything I told him to do. Started eating the protein, went on the aminos, started going to AA. We got him sober. He was doing really, really well. But this was winter and spring. But he was really concerned about summer because every summer he would go camping and he would go camping with his drinking buddies. And he could not imagine drinking, or he could not imagine camping without beer. It just didn't compute. How on earth are you going to have fun on a camping trip if you're not drinking around the campfire? And so summer came and he disappeared. He just didn't come back for a year. Now he's 29. Now he's even more suicidal. Now his cirrhosis has progressed even more. And now he just believes he can't do it at all. And see, he'd failed and, right? So we drag him back out of the pit get him eating again, get him taking supplements again, changing his self-talk, getting him successful again, supporting his liver, getting him back into AA. But this time around, his whole entire relationship with AA changed. Before, he was just sort of going and listening, but he wasn't really participating, and he didn't create a new social group. But the second time around, he did create a social group. He started speaking because this time he knew that if he drank again, he'd be dead, which he actually would be. So he knew he literally couldn't pick up again. And so his desperation led him to engage in AA differently. And he started socializing with people. And he started, going out with them and engaging with them and doing things with them. And spring passed, and now we're at summer again. I looked at him and I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go camping with my AA buddies." So first camping trip came, and he brought 2 AA friends, but he was also going with his old camping buddies. And I was a little concerned about this, but he did have, he had a sponsor and he had a couple of other sober people along. He comes back to his next session and he said, "I had no idea how much fun I was missing out on being drunk through the whole camping trip." He said, "Me and my AA buddies, we were out there, we were rock climbing, and we were, doing that thing you do on the water, and when with those little things." Sorry. And he said, "We were having a blast. But my other buddies, they were just nodding out around the fire, and they were too drunk or too hungover to go out and do the real fun things." He said, "I had no idea." And he stayed sober. So I really like that story. The fourth category, which this one, perfectly ties into, is that of habit. And habit ties into a conditioned response, right? Habits become, hardwired into us. And so I had the woman who every day, when she would leave work, she would drive right past the liquor store and would stop, go in and buy, I think, a couple of, like 3 little of those, bottles. Okay, go home and drink them. And of course, as her drinking evolved, she would buy more and more of the little bottles. But what she would do is stop at 5:15, because she would get off at work at 5. By 5:15, she would be in the liquor store. And by 5:30, she'd be on her way to getting drunk. So when she first got sober and went back to work, I think she went to a treatment program for 30 days. She went back to work. She started driving home, and she automatically drove into the parking lot because she wasn't thinking. It was such an automatic habitual response that she found herself parking, and they said, "What the hell am I doing? I'm not going to go in there." But she sort of had to sit and wrestle with herself a little bit before she could turn around and drive home without getting out of the car. So every day that week when she drove past the liquor store, it was a struggle to not drive in. She had to remind herself as to why she needed to stay sober. She had to use every skill in the book to not pull into that parking lot. And it was the only time she had a craving. Okay, once she got home, she didn't have a craving. The craving was tied to the conditioned response of driving past the liquor store. So the solution was, first of all, make sure she had glutamine or food before she left her office so that she had access to her recovery skills. And because she needed that in order to remember to drive a different way home. We literally changed her route home. So the people who, drink every New Year's Eve, who drink, with football games, right? That there are these certain times that have become habits and things. You have to get really, or who just, you see this a lot with cigarette smokers. Okay. Lighting up the moment you get in the car, it's a habit. Lighting up with your first cup of coffee in the morning. Going out for a cigarette on your back porch right before you go to bed. Okay, yes, there are biochemical pieces to this because this nicotine is firing different neurotransmitters. We can manage that with amino acids. The habit part is you have to substitute a different activity. So sometimes it's going for a walk when you get home from work rather than pouring yourself a drink to break the habit, okay, to instill, break the conditioned response of walking through your front door or driving past the liquor store. And you do that enough times, it actually breaks the conditioned response and you have a new habit in place. I tell my clients to create a fun drink, something they can look forward to drinking and enjoy that's not high sugar. So that, again, there's no deprivation, because you cannot take something away from somebody and leave a void. If there's that Bible story where Jesus says, you remove one demon and 7 more will flood in to take its place. So you can't leave a void, because you got to work with people to find out what are they going to fill that space with. What are they going to drink at the football game or at the party instead? How are they going to celebrate instead? Well, you see, and this is where the switching to sugar addiction is so insidious, because people easily, without thinking about it, will substitute sugar. So we have to talk to our clients about that, and we have to help them find non-sugar substitutes that are still fun and enjoyable and celebratory. Or we help them through the grieving process, that they're just simply not going to be able to celebrate the way they used to. That maybe they're not going to be able to go join the girls by the pool with the wine. And so what are they going to do instead? And sitting home feeling sorry for yourself is not an option. Okay. But we really have to work with people. And if we don't have the skills, we refer them to the therapists and the counselors and the coaches who do have the skills. We don't have to do it all ourselves. So we have to be creating this collaborative community around us so that we know to whom to refer our clients to do that sort of work. To help our clients break the old habit and come up with a new life-sustaining habit that they can actually enjoy. So that's my little presentation.